Today we're going to be discussing the reason why comp makes absolutely no sense in Dead by Daylight. I'm often asked when I stream on Twitch why I don't play comp myself, and it's likely the same reason as to why most DBD content creators don't play comp, and that's because DBD is essentially a party game at its core. It's an asymmetrical horror game, so it's essentially designed to be somewhat imbalanced. That's also why terms like killer-sided and survivor-sided often don't make sense in an asymmetrical horror game, but that's a completely different discussion for another day. If I was going to spend some time playing the comp scene in a video game, it only makes sense to play something that was designed to be competitive, something like Street Fighter for example. I'm definitely not saying that Dead by Daylight isn't competitive. Literally any online multiplayer game is highly competitive as people do want to win, but with the way that DBD was developed, it clearly wasn't made with a comp scene in mind since it's an asymmetrical horror game. People often complain about imbalance in DBD, and whilst they obviously can't have things that are incredibly strong and game breaking for too long, asymmetrical games are designed to be somewhat imbalanced to an extent. After all, it is a 4 versus 1 game. If you've ever watched any DBD comp games, you'll see just how silly it is. Nurse is pretty much the only killer that even has a chance against a comp team in terms of killing off the survivors, which is why many comp games are judged by hooks rather than kills. The amount of different rules and the amount of things that are often banned to use in the DBD comp scene completely sum up just how ridiculous it is. Don't get me wrong, if you are someone that is a die-hard DBD fan and absolutely love the game, then fair enough. But for me, if I was going to play the comp scene of a certain game, I'd go for a game that has a legitimate comp scene, something like EAFC/FIFA. As a football fan or soccer fan for you Americans, I've always enjoyed EAFC/FIFA, and that is a game that has an amazing comp scene. It has a comp mode built into the game where you can qualify for actual tournaments and even be signed by actual football teams like Manchester City to their esport team, and you'd also make some really good money if you were good enough. Whereas Dead by Daylight's comp scene consists of a few people in a Discord server with pages of dozens and dozens of rules and banned perks in an attempt to make a comp scene for an asymmetrical horror game. Another reason why the DBD comp scene makes no sense is the fact that tunneling and camping can often be not only accepted but also encouraged, since it's a great strategy in order to win. I personally have no issues with camping and tunneling, and I just accept that it is part of the game. But with that said, I do definitely agree with the majority of the player base that says it is a boring way to win as killer, but the fact still does remain that it is a very efficient way to win. So this is yet another reason as to why comp in DBD makes absolutely no sense to me, and I'm sure it's another reason as to why it isn't very popular overall, with almost the entire DBD player base consisting of players who have never even watched DBD content, let alone played it themselves. After all, why would players choose to watch or play a boring and watered down version of DBD filled with rules and restrictions where the most objectively boring and most hated playstyle is often encouraged? Like I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the comp scene, but it definitely is and always will be, in my opinion, a very niche hobby and something that just isn't worth it to 99.99% of players. Certainly nothing wrong with having a niche hobby though. If comp DBD is something that you personally enjoy, then more power to you. Another major issue with the DBD comp scene is that it's just a huge waste of time if you aren't someone that lives and breathes DBD. As mentioned earlier, there's tons of other games that would be a much better option for playing the comp scene, whether that's the opportunity to win prizes, large amounts of money, the potential to make a career out of it, or perhaps just enjoying the comp scene of a game with a large and growing community could also be a very fun and rewarding thing for some people. The problem with the DBD comp scene is that it doesn't seem to have any of these. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely prizes that you can win from tournaments, like $1,000 for you and your team to split, but as mentioned earlier, these aren't official tournaments. They're set up via Discord or Twitter by other fans of the DBD comp scene. So whilst the winner may consider themselves a tournament winner for winning a DBD tournament, it's an unofficial contest, and for this reason it isn't going to be considered a legitimate achievement by anyone else outside of the DBD comp scene. Again, nothing wrong if you do enjoy participating in DBD tournaments and find it enjoyable, but if you are looking to win a DBD tournament for some credibility or validation, don't expect people to take you too seriously for saying that you've won a fan-made tournament in DBD, because it's definitely nothing like winning in an official esport. Not only is the DBD comp scene filled with restrictions and rules in an attempt to make it somewhat playable, but the gameplay is extremely boring in comparison to the regular games. Again, why play a watered down, boring version of the actual DBD when you can just play the real thing? We've briefly gone over tunneling and camping on the killer side, as well as the fact that the majority of killers are just not viable to use, especially if the goal is to get a 3k or a 4k. As mentioned earlier, this is why many comp scenes are decided on hooks rather than kills. 3 survivors could escape and the killer could still win the game for their team with only 4 hooks. In fact, it's almost like a completely different game entirely, and not in a good way. But with that said, another thing I still haven't mentioned yet is how boring the gameplay can be from the survivor point of view. The game consists of the survivors pre-dropping pretty much every single pallet and playing as safely as possible. Obviously, this is a very efficient way to play, but something that wouldn't really work as well in regular games games due to the lack of efficiency on generators. I guess it could work in a 4-man survive with friends where all 4 survivors are great at the game and very efficient on the generators, but there's no denying that it is a very boring way to play survivor, and also could be a risky strategy in regular games due to the fact that you'd be burning through the pallets. If even just one player wasn't operating at 100% gen efficiency at all times, then this plan could easily backfire. So far I've said a lot of negative things about the DBD comp scene, and whilst this is somewhat of a more negative video since I personally don't see the point of comp in DBD, I do want to say some positives about it as well. So first of all, the players in the DBD comp scene are all absolutely amazing at the game for the most part. This obviously goes without saying, but they are all very talented when it comes to playing Dead by Daylight, and they are among the very best to play the game. Comp could also be a good way to test out a certain perk to see just how strong it is, whether that's a killer perk or a survivor perk, as well as a great way to see just how strong a new killer is that gets released, or how strong a certain killer add-on combination is. But other than that, I can't really see any other reasons as to why it would be useful for myself personally, and I'm sure the vast majority of DBD players would agree with me on that. But I'd definitely love to know your thoughts in the comments down below, and would love to hear from the players that do play DBD competitively, along with your reasons for playing it, whether that's purely for fun or maybe to win as many DBD tournaments as possible. I'd definitely love to know what brings people to the DBD comp scene, even though it's something that I'd never personally play myself. Overall, the DBD comp scene is definitely a little silly to me personally, and something that I'd consider to be a huge waste of time for myself, due to the fact it is just a boring and restricted version of DBD. Like I said, I'd definitely much rather play regular DBD matches, or even a different game entirely if I was looking to get into a comp scene of a certain game, but that is just me, and whilst I am sure the vast majority of you guys would agree, that's not to say that no one enjoys playing DBD in a competitive scene. Whilst it may be a small and niche group of players, there's definitely people out there that do very much enjoy playing some comp DBD, regardless of how unpopular it may be. Dead by Daylight is an asymmetrical horror game, and this reason alone is exactly why comp will never be even remotely popular in my opinion. The game just isn't designed in a way that makes sense in a comp setting, but much like any niche hobby, that's not to say there isn't people that find enjoyment in it. Friday the 13th is another asymmetrical horror game. The only difference is that Friday the 13th was 7v1 rather than 4v1, and I remember even that game had a very small and niche comp scene as well. But the Friday the 13th comp scene was arguably even more ridiculous than the DBD comp scene, since it was a 7v1 game, but perhaps not as ridiculous as the DBD comp scene, because the Friday the 13th comp scene didn't have to restrict and ban things in order to make it playable, whereas the DBD one does. I definitely feel like the DBD comp scene will always be something that is very niche and unpopular, and something that I'd imagine gets a very few number of new players, if anyone, who is interested in starting to join and participate in the DBD comp scene, but they definitely seem to have a small but loyal and dedicated player base. Whilst I'm sure that many of you guys would agree the comp scene is a waste of time and just isn't really that fun, I do have a question for you guys that do also agree with me. If you did have to choose one game to play competitively, which game would that be? Like I said earlier, for me it would be EAFC/FIFA, due to the opportunities that it could create if you got extremely good at it, or maybe even Street Fighter, as that's also another competitive game that I've always enjoyed playing. But whilst Dead by Daylight can be competitive, there isn't an online multiplayer game out there that exists that isn't competitive, and DBD at its core is definitely much more of a party game rather than anything designed to be played at a competitive level. Obviously everyone wants to win, and that's normal in pretty much every single game, so the game will always be competitive in the sense that players want to use strong perks in order to increase their chances of winning, but creating a comp scene is taking things to a whole other level. Definitely let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, and definitely feel free to let me know in the comments down below if you do play comp yourself. I'd love to hear from you guys that do play comp, as well as you guys that agree with me and say that comp is just a waste of time or not fun to play. Whether you've never even seen a game of comp DBD or have thousands of hours playing comp yourself, I definitely love to hear from all of you guys in the comments down below. And this has been a bit of a different video, so I hope you guys have enjoyed it, but as always I will see you all in the next one.